I've decided to change up the beverage today.
Yeah, I see you're drinking milk.
Yeah, you want to know why?
Why?
Because, I'm just not myself, man. But if we're being honest, I can't recall just how long it has been since I felt like I'm anyone else.
And he smokes.
And welcome back, everyone, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi, hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name that are about to have their own party of their own with this episode here. I am the one, the only, the undisputed Ryan James Kearns.
And it's not a bit, by the way. Ryan actually is drinking milk. That is not a joke. I am the undisputed and ready to roll Matthew James Durzik.
And if this is your very first time listening to this podcast here, first of all, it's called Hey, Listen to This. Second of all, welcome. And third of all, what me and Matt do here is essentially every week we take turns picking an album that we're going to dissect track by track. We can go as long as we want, or we can go as short as we want. We just basically go by the flow of the conversation and the track and all the other bloops and bleeps that we want to get in there. And so last week, what album did we cover, Matt?
We covered the one and only Blood on the Tracks by Mr. Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And this week we are switching things up quite heavily.
We're doing a hard pivot.
Kind of a hard pivot. Definitely, it's in the same landosphere, but if last week was East Coast, this week is definitely West Coast.
Yeah. So this week we are dissecting the album Why Would I Watch by the band Hot Mulligan. And for those of you who are wondering what a Hot Mulligan is,
tune into the end of our last episode, reverse the audio, and find out for yourself.
But for those of you who don't want to pause this pod to go to the last pod, essentially Hot Mulligan, nuts and bolts, the best way I can describe them, they're an emo rock band.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Think about like what we experienced with Spanish love songs. More screamy vocals, and this might be a little bit of a controversial opinion in my head, but I would say maybe slightly better instrumentation. Like, yeah, just a little bit.
I know what you're saying, and that's tough. Mm-hmm. That's tough. I feel like there's more of a emphasis on instrumentation between the two.
Yeah.
Like, I think overall I would rather listen to Spanish love songs than Hot Mulligan, but I understand what you're saying. I would say that the instrumentation is a bit more diverse and broad with Hot Mulligan.
Yeah.
It's particularly on this album. So
the way I got introduced to Hot Mulligan, because I was the one who picked the album this week, was, well, it was kind of like a trilogy here. So like my first introduction is I was vaguely aware of like their existence within their first couple albums. Like I think I listened to like their debut and I was just like, oh yeah, that's fine. And then part two of that trilogy is when this album came out and it got recommended to me. I think it was through brooklynvegan.com, where they do like every week they do like notable releases. That's how I actually get caught up on a lot of my new releases nowadays. Suck it, Anthony Fantano. But the last part, like the second part of the trilogy there, I really dug the album. I thought it had like a lot of great flows. Spoiler alert. But like I really liked what it brought to the table. And then part three of that trilogy is when I saw this band live.
We saw this band live.
Yeah, we did, man. And I was absolutely blown away because I didn't think they were going to put as good of a live show on as they did. Yeah,
they really did. And granted, I sort of half remember seeing the show or parts of the show because that was at the Roxy Theater, and that was about, let's say, a year ago.
Yeah.
and my ears are still recovering.
Public service announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget your earplugs.
Yeah, don't be me.
But to be fair, the rock scene kind of has like maybe not the best acoustics. If I could be real with you.
No, it's a little. I mean, it doesn't have the worst acoustics in the city of Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I can off the top of my head, the Smiling Moose is way worse.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're not trying to get into a pissing match between which venue is the best. But we're just sharing our experiences. But from what I remember, Hot Mulligan. I really liked their stuff, and then coming into this album, I was kind of like, yeah, I remember that band. I wonder how they sound on record, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So I think we're ready to kick it off here.
Let's go. And the first, before we get into that, just a fair warning. The song titles of these songs do not really have anything to do with the actual songs themselves.
Yeah.
Why that is, I don't know. You might have some insight on that.
I mean, for each song, I have like a little like blurb about the song, and why the song title is what it is. But sometimes it's basically like, hey, this is what we thought of for the song title. That's basically it. So
the first song is called "Shouldn't Have a Leg Hole, But I Do."
So I'll kick this one off if you don't mind. So, little blurb about the song here. So, this song is basically about Tade Sandville. Keep in mind, when I say Tade Sandville, he is the guy who's screaming and doing like most of the singing. There are two vocalists on this album here, but Tade is saying this about this song. This song is him yelling about his poor mental health and how it is permanent, and how he's come to terms with that. And then in terms of like the actual song title, it originates from Chris, the backing vocalist and rhythm guitarist, popping a cyst on his leg, thus causing him to have a hole in his leg.
Well then.
Yeah.
Great start.
Yeah. So, speaking about great starts, what a great start to the album, in my opinion. Like, so you get with this track here, you get like that little like drum machine loop that spits you right into Tade's dizzying kind of vocals that are accompanied with that acoustic guitar strumming, and he basically kind of says I would almost say like the thesis statement of the song lyrically, and then after that you get the full instrumental palette and the dizzying guitars. The guitar work on this track here and throughout the album is phenomenal. It's one of my highlights off the whole thing for me. Yeah, and the opening lyrics, they really caught me. They actually come into play at the very end of the track, too. Tades is singing about, hang my hat, don't think I'll ever get to leave. The door seems to run from my hand. So you can imagine, that fear of, being trapped in the house and, trying to escape. And this could be, him talking about, his mental health as a whole, where he's running towards the door and he can't escape from it. But overall, in terms of kicking off the album here, this is a perfect intro to the album and the band as a whole, if you're not familiar with them.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. The lyrics to me were very reminiscent. It seems like there's a pattern, particularly with emo rock bands, or at least the ones we've covered on this show, where the opening song is some sort of heart-wrenching testament to, this is the state of my life. Either I'm going to get the hell out of here, or I'm just going to stay and wallow in it. Because the two songs that I was reminded of immediately were Bleed American off of Bleed American and Routine Pain off of Brave Faces, Everybody. Very much in the similar type of, such is life living in the suburbs and I'm kind of trapped within. Sonically, I agree that, the intro has a nice little campiness to it. Before it goes to the full sound, which to me, combined with the vocals and the instruments, I wrote down sounds kind of like Fall Out Boy of Blink-182 with a louder wall of sound. Like the guitars are a lot more layered than the other ones would be. I agree, it's a very solid opener.
Um, and talking about like other moments here in the album, the track here that hit me. Then we can move on to "It's a Family Movie." She hates her dad. Excellent track name, by the way.
Yeah.
Love all the track names here. So like one thing that I like about Tade's vocal delivery in this track here is that he has moments where he's rapidly delivering lyrics, and then it contrasts well with the second to last verse, when the second last verse hits, where it kind of like slows down a little bit more. Like he's like more riding waves of like notes and screams. And in terms of how that opening verse contrasts very well to the last verse. So the last verse goes, "Hang my hat, don't think I'll ever want to leave. The door never met my sight." So he's just essentially given up at this rate. So, but yeah, dude, awesome opener, dude.
Agreed. It's a very solid way to introduce the album and really the band to those who are not familiar with the way they sound.
And even thanks to like this review here, like I was very happy I was able to like look at the lyrics, because I could be honest with you, up until this point, I never knew what they like. For some moments, I knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But like most of the times, it's kind of hard to like understand what like screamy vocals can like what they're actually saying. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So second track is entitled "It's a Family Movie. She hates her dad." Do you have any reason as to why this is titled the way it is?
So this track is basically about the generational effects of alcoholism and drug abuse. So I mean that could basically be it.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, because sometimes you watch a family movie and you're like, oh, that's who I used to know back when they were the way that they were, and in some cases still maybe are. But I'll say it maintains the momentum of the opener. I mean, it's I wouldn't even call it a transition. It just goes right into this track.
Yeah.
And you talk about the vocals. I think the two vocal system they have on this track and many others is great. I love how it's it sort of has the same feel to it. It never loses momentum. But at the same time, even though their vocal styles are similar, the way they play off each other works so well. It's a bit more of a dancier track too. Like the first track was more or less pure traditional emo punk, 1, 2, 3, 4. But this one slows things down a little bit, but maintains the thematic and sonic overdrive of the first track. I like this track too.
This track is my second favorite track off the album.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, mainly because like the jamminess that you were just alluding to works out so well, and I like the lyrical messaging behind it. How like hey, this is what I was brought up with. This is what I was exposed to, and is anything gonna ever change? I don't think so. This is what I'm predestined to be. Like, I like that. And I like the repetition of like the blackout, am I better now? And how like that leads into like the rest of the instrumentals. I feel like that works out so freaking good. And just the lyrics here are so defeatist about like how he's talking about seeing his family off their face as he was graduating. So like for those of you who are like, wait, what? What does that mean, off their face? So that means like he's basically seeing his family high while he's graduating. So like he's trying to escape that past generation, but he sees like, oh, as like in one of his highlights of his life so far, he has his family history staring at him right in the face. And I feel like that line delivery works out so well, especially at the end of that section where he's saying, I'll never find the will to change, and if I could, I would say the same. Basically saying, this is who I am. I'm not gonna, I can't find the will to change.
That is fascinating, because I would imagine, again, if you're in that situation of, graduating and seeing, the trauma of your family, like right before your eyes. I mean, yeah, I'd be wailing and screaming myself because that's pretty brutal.
And like a couple other notes off the track here. Like the guitar work here is phenomenal. I'm gonna say that about like every single track here.
I'm sure you will, yeah.
Like, except for like maybe like one or two tracks, but we'll get to them. And like at the very end where the band cuts out and Tate is just repeating the blackout, "Am I better now?" That works out so well. But overall, like, I love the track placement here and how like this contrasts so well from that opening track, so you don't get the same kind of thing. I will admit though, right out of the gate here, that if this is not your typical kind of style of music, and if you're not really exposed to this band as a whole will have the tendency to, I don't know, sound a bit samey. And more so than Spanish love songs, because I felt like that band brought enough to the table to bring something new to each song.
Yeah.
This band is basically not really concerned with that. They're like, hey, we're just going to write some lyrics, we're going to have a performance, and cut.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's all I have for that song. You ready to go on to the next track?
Yeah, let's move on to "And I Smoke."
So, this is my third favorite track off the album.
Oh, wow. Started out strong.
So, the only thing I can really say about this track here, why it's called "And I Smoke." So, Tate spoke about this when regarding the track. He was talking to his therapist about, like, the anxieties that he was feeling while he was in, like, his house or his living arrangement at night. Yeah. And he was having anxieties about, like, he's feeling like someone's there. And in order to calm down, he would smoke. So, yeah.
Someone else.
So, in terms of, like, following the framework of either the first track or the second track in terms of, like, what it brings to the table, this is more, again, another kind of jammy kind of song.
Yeah.
And I can't say enough great things about what the band is doing here. At first, I noticed the guitar work, which is, like, again, a love of mine throughout this whole album. Then the drums, and then the bass. Everyone's killing it here with their parts. The dueling vocals are not much of a focus here as compared to, like, the last track. But they're still nice, though.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that the vocals do complement each other solidly, but I do agree probably more so on this track than several of the other ones that the guitar work does stand out. Yeah. Because the first time I actually listened to this album was right after we recorded our last episode, because we were just chilling and you're just like, hey, let's put this record on right now. And I remember right away digging the... I have them labeled pseudo surf guitars, kind of similar to like a Rock Lobster or something like that. And the lyrics I do like. They were interesting lyrics. I wasn't sure what exactly they were about. I wrote anxiety ? Which again could very well be this whole album.
Yeah.
But no, I dig this song too. I'm not sure if I would put it in my top 3 though. We'll get to what may get there.
Okay. Yeah. So, remember how I talked about I shouldn't have a leg hole, but I do? And how, like, Tade's contrasted 2 different parts of that song lyrically?
Yeah.
So, he does that again here.
Gotcha.
So the groove that happens in the chorus here, 1, that groove is so freaking good. 2, that groove is, like, the first part about that groove is him just saying, like, hey, I'm doing my affirmations, I'm doing what my therapist taught me, slow my breathing, count my thoughts, all that good stuff. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but, like, so first part, affirmation. Second part is, like, oh no, I'm still having panic attacks because my breath feels like it's hair and all that, like, random stuff. That works out so well, especially considering, like, the first part is more singy, second part's more screamy. So in the last chorus here, Tade's is singing about, I don't think it makes a difference, quoting useless affirmations. So he's basically saying, screw what my therapist was telling me. I'm just going to do what I feel like this isn't helping me, so I'm just going to embrace whatever's going on.
Right. And then that's a strong sentiment, too, because to feel that within yourself, to be like, I got to be my own person, and just sort of break from that sort of advice. Because I've thought about that too, and I don't want to turn this into a discussion about what therapy is.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're just thinking about like the basic thought of it. It's like, okay, I'm struggling, but do I need someone to tell me who I am, or someone to help me discover who I am? And if they can't do that for me, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand the sentiment of, maybe wanting to break free from that.
Yeah. And one other quick note about the track here, because, I can go down therapy talk all day long.
Yeah.
I think I missed my calling to be a therapist in another lifetime, but, I can't go back in school now. Anyways, pivoting back to the track discussion here. So that moment where he essentially saying, hey, screw what my therapist is saying, right before that, there's a instrumental break. And I kind of like that placement there, because you go through that same thing a couple different times, like in terms of like verse chorus, then you get that instrumental break where he's probably just thinking, at least within the context of the song, that, oh hey, this ain't working. Yeah, whatever. I'm just gonna do whatever I'm gonna do. But overall, love the track. Subject matter of the song, you can Tage does a really good job delivering vocals and lyrics in such a manner where it's not coated in mystery, like how in Black Country New Road, where we basically had to be like, okay, what's the meaning behind this here? It's more of like, hey, this is literally what's going on. I'm literally singing about this. Here's my literal passion.
Yeah, and that's, again, when you got that in rock and roll, it's a very good thing to have.
So the next track.
The next track
is called.
This song is called. It's called what it's called.
And you want to lead this one off?
Yeah, I'll lead this one off. First of all, great title. Secondly, this is the first time on the record you were talking about how the band seems to sound very samey throughout the course of the record. This is the first time they sort of differentiate for a little bit, particularly on the intro, where it sounds a little softer and a bit more, I wouldn't say laid back, but definitely a bit more sparse as far as the instrumentation, before it builds back into the sonic wall that they have provided. The lyrics on here, great about wasting life on drunken nights. Again, relatively similar to Routine Pain, but it feels a bit more personal, a bit more, I wouldn't say a bit more personal than that, but it definitely seems a bit more sort of hazy, like A Drunken Night in a sense.
Yeah.
That they're just sort of recollecting one night where they were just like, they feel like they went too far. It's just like, okay, I guess we're just going to do this all over again. So very similar in a sense to Routine Pain in that regard. The outro is great. The outro is great on this track. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I would put this in the top three. Maybe. I can't say it's in the top three because there's a few other songs that we're going to get to. But I like this song too.
I can't wait to see what you have in your top three, because I already blend through two of my selections already. Hopefully, maybe we share one. Maybe we'll see.
We'll see.
So this song is very interesting. There's moments in this track here that I absolutely love. Especially you get Tage singing more without singing more clean vocals. I love the moments where he's singing about I'll retrace the capital the day we wandered all the monuments belly full of drinks. Those kind of free kind of moments that you described, they work well for me. The one nitpick that I'm going to have legitimately with this song here is the moments where, kind of in the middle where you have that cascading guitar and Tate is just really going on about, saying, I have so much to say, so much to say, so much to say. It's almost like he's buffering, and, if done well, it could have worked out. But, about halfway through of that little, moment there, I'm like, okay, I get it. You wish you had so much to say, or you had so much to say. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. Again, I probably, that's probably why, among other things, I wouldn't put this in my top three, because even though Again, I do like the shifts in sound on a little bit of the track. It's not enough for me to bump it up to a higher standard.
Yeah. I will say, though, like, the slow build that occurs at the very, like basically kicking off the end of the track where you can feel the intensity, especially with the dueling vocals working so well together, where you get, like, the two emotions of, like, hey, angst about, like, how life has developed for you, and the nostalgia for what life was. Like, that works out well. And when you're using two vocals like that, that's an excellent placement for it. So overall, I hate to say it, this is probably like my least favorite song off the album, but that's not saying much. Like, I don't have many, like, nitpicks about the rest of the album, to be honest.
Right. And then it's not my least favorite either. We'll get to that.
No. Oh.
It's not it's again, it's sort of in the same category. It's not as nitpicky, but again, we'll talk about it.
All right. So the next track is called "No Shoes in the Coffee Shop or Socks." So this track here, let me try to summarize the little blurb I had here. So this is another nostalgia-based track, where you find yourself looking back fondly on the stuff you did, but you oftentimes, like, have the pitfall of, like, oh, hey, I'm looking back on stuff that I did, but here's how I messed up, and those thoughts keep you up at night. So in regards to the title of the track, Chris Freeman, the backing vocalist, said this simply: "We went to the coffee shop the day we wrote it, and I didn't want to put on shoes."
Simple enough.
So, another jam-based song here, man, and I love the how it starts out, where you just have the guitar and drum setting the groove, and Tate's singing works well with not too many moments of him screaming, at least right out of the gate. And again, like, if this song could have probably landed in my top 3 if it wasn't for, like, different other moments for the other 2 tracks there. But that groove that hits in that chorus, it's not momentous, but it's a groove that I'm riding all the way home.
Yeah, I am right there with you. In fact, you were curious as to what my top 3 is.
Yeah.
This is in my top 3, and it's actually number 1.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
Because I'll admit, and I know we've talked about this in many past lives, particularly our past lives as actual, well, I won't even call them radio show hosts, but back when we were on WGEV, my affinity for hooks and vocal harmonies, and this song's got that to a T. I love the harmonies on this track. I think the hooks are great. And lyrically, I think the momentum is actually maintained. This almost feels like a sequel to the previous track, because it feels like the day after another drunken night where you're thinking, okay, we've done this so many times, now what do we do? So I really like that momentum as well. But overall, what gets me about the song is just how it sounds. The vocals, great. The guitars, like you mentioned, great. The drums, great. It's such a groovy track. And I know it's a little antithetical to the rest of the album sonically, but I don't care. I like it.
So, one moment here that I want to highlight, and maybe I'll talk about a couple other moments, is the lyrics section that goes, "The question that came next is if my memories led to stark regret. Well, then why would I watch?" I feel like that this song here, it's a very important song off the album, because I feel like this whole album is Tade's and the band looking back on, like, their life, and that kind of makes sense why the album's called "Why Would I Watch." So, other than that, the bridge section here, I really like. The dueling vocals work out so well. Chris's vocals in that section are so distorted, and they're so good. And yeah, overall, great song, dude.
Really great song. The next song is called "Christ Alive, My Toe Damn It Hurts." I'm curious to see what you got for this one as far as a blurb.
Alright, so the blurb I got here is that I actually don't have the reason why, like, well, actually, hold on. Let me try to spin it here. Okay. So, this is, the song is kind of about, like, more self-hatred and, like, repeating habits that one does. And, he wants to die. And, yeah, I can't make sense of this here.
I mean, I will say if you stub your toe, you probably have those thoughts, so let's go with that.
Yeah, so anyways, you want to...
This came, I'm thinking about it, and this comes super close to being in my top 3. It would easily be my number 4. Because for one thing, it does have my favorite line throughout the entire album, which is, when did wanting to live start to go out of fashion? And I'm thinking, man, because again, we've talked about this again on the Spanish Love Songs episode, where there was a lot of sort of, feelings of wanting to die and not just feeling the way things are. And this almost feels like sort of a self-critical moment in emo rock, like saying, wait, we want to be alive, what the hell's going on here? So again, that was my favorite line throughout the entire album, at least the one that stood out to me the most. I really appreciate the guitar work on this one as well. Strong volley at the very end of lead guitar is just gonna go bang bang loud. And also I thought that the screaming, there's some parts of this album where I didn't like the screaming, and we'll get to that. I thought the screaming on here was very good. And I also thought that, because I was kind of thought at the beginning, like, what does this band sound like? It sounds like a very, like, the vibes I was getting the whole time were very, like, early 2000s emo vibes.
Yeah.
And the one band that came to mind on my third listen to the album, and I don't know if you will disagree with this, is Good Charlotte. Like, it sounds a lot like Good Charlotte in a sense. Like, obviously better than Good Charlotte. Let's establish that. But sonically, I sort of see some similarities there.
I could see them being a cousin, in that same family, where, at least instrumentally, that was a very apt comparison, though. So, so you're talking about, like, the screaming on this track here.
Yeah,
it is my the moments where Tade's is screaming about, I feel like dying. I'm not gonna scream. 1, I'm not that skilled, and 2, no one wants to really hear that. But like, those moments are one of my highlights off the album in terms of, like, his screaming. Like, if I had to be honest, it's probably my favorite moment in terms of his screaming vocals, because it punches you right in the face, dude. You're absolutely right about the guitar work here. I love the contrast between the muted strumming and, like, the little guitar licks that he's riding. It works out so deliciously well. I'm here for it all day long. And then one other part I'm going to highlight here is the very end. This is one of my favorite endings, where, like, you get that dreamy section where it's just like, oh, hey, put your head down, no one cares about you, put your head down. And then you get Tade's coming in with that screaming, saying that he's going to pull his hair out, no one cares. And then, putting his head down, no one cares. So, like, he's absolutely losing his mind. So for a song that's about self-hatred and, like, so many moments of, like, the lead singer really just saying he wants to die, this song is so amazing. And it's thanks to these songs that I want to hear more stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So it makes me want to live.
Is it in your top 3?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. A song like that, you're describing a song that's not in your top 3 like that. I'm curious to see what your overall rating is going to be. 1 digit or 2?
Well, we'll see, man. So the next track is called Betty.
It is called Betty, and we were sort of teased last week about Betty because that's the choice I made, which led to this album being chosen over the constant second place finisher in Bright Eyes, but we won't talk about that right now. Betty, why is it called Betty?
So this song is about a pet that Tate's had to put down. So the pet was named Betty.
Okay, that sounds right.
Yeah,
and you pretty much described the song as a whole, pretty much, at least from a lyrical standpoint, because I was kind of wondering what it was about, and then I got that last verse about the ashes. It's just like, oh. And also, this what's weird about this song too is that it's one of the few songs. I mean, granted, we're only 4 years. I don't want to say past it. I don't want to get into a political conversation, but 4 years since the meat of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
This is one of those songs that actually kind of addresses it, or at least references it in its verses.
Yeah.
Aside from that, the fact that this is a sort of quick acoustic ballad, it just it changes things up, and even though it's a little brighter sonically, it's still devastating because of the lyrics. And that whistling, that's going to get stuck in my head.
So, for those of you who are not aware, and Matt's well aware of this because he's a best friend of mine, this year we had to put down a dog, like the very first dog that's ever been like, hey, this is my dog. And hearing a song like this, especially the moment where he's talking about getting the ashes in the mail, like that kind of, I felt that in my soul. But absolutely beautiful song, and for not the subject material alone, because Tade's, again, his vocals, his lyrics do a really good job painting an excellent picture here, but the fact that the recording sounds so intimate, like it would be the equivalent of like if I gave you a guitar right now and recorded like what we got going on. Like if you were to do that, it would sound like that, because you even hear like the moments where he's hitting like the body of the acoustic guitar, along with the singing that isn't like recorded perfectly, but it is just so good, dude. I can't say enough good things about it.
It really is a great track, and also, again, we've talked about this before too, particularly I think with the Boy Genius record and a couple others. This being, the era of, sort of rock bands going towards vinyl. This is the start of the second side, which I think is a nice sort of twist for an introduction to that side. So I like that part too.
Yeah, and the sequencing here is absolutely amazing. I'm going to make the case over the next couple tracks here, if you're ready for it.
What case?
Well, if you're ready for the next track.
We are ready for the next track.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. I was kind of caught in the headlights for a second there myself. I was like, what? What's he talking about?
So the next track.
The next track.
I'll just say it, man. It's okay.
Go for it.
So the next track is Cock Party 2. Better than the first.
Blurb, please.
So, I would say this track, if I could summarize the blurb a little bit, it's another nostalgia track, looking back on like old friends and how you've lost touch with them. So if you're a guy,
yeah.
So yeah, you want to dive into?
Yeah, I'll dive into this track. The title aside, I think I'm putting this at number. Where do I put it? I want to say this is number 2.
Yeah.
On the album as far as tracks I like, because I second time around I was like taken away by just how great the build is throughout the song. Sonically, it kind of reminds me of The Middle by Jimmy Eat World a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely has sort of that build, but it has that sort of talk about like you say. I wrote that it's lyrically about lost ambitions, woes of adulting.
Yeah.
Because I like a track in this setting that kind of tells you exactly what it's about. And in here, it just sort of describes, this situation where he's thinking about, what is and what could have been. And it almost feels like the singer here is trying, or the singers rather, are trying to get that last little shred of, hey, maybe it could still be this way. And I love how the track ends with that.
Yeah.
Granted, it is a little BoJack Horseman-y as far as the last grasp at past glories. But I really like this track a lot. I think it sounds great. It's lyrically great. Again, the vocals complement each other very well. They sort of layer on top of each other without really getting in each other's way. I really like this track a lot.
You hit the nail right on the head. Like, I can't really add too much flair to it. Everything that you just said, I absolutely agree with. Just a couple other notes I'm going to add.
Yep.
So when I talked about, the track placement here and how, the sequencing works out so well. So think about, how the song before Betty, which was Christ Alive, My Toe Damn It Hurts. You get... At the very end, you get very screaming, a very definitive statement. Then you get Betty, which is a nice reset here. And then in Cock Party 2, it starts out with that little jangly riff that kicks off the track, and then it builds and with the vocals coming in, and then you get the drums, and then at the very end here you get almost like a full pivot to the rest of the intensity of the rest of the album. I feel like these two tracks sequence well. It helps reintroduce the intensity of the band to the listener. I feel like it works out well.
It really does. I'm putting it at number 2.
All right. So yeah. The next track is Shh. Golf is on. And ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived. This is my favorite track off the album.
Is it really?
Yeah.
All right. This is a little awkward because it's actually tied for my least favorite track on the album.
All right, here we go, man. Here we go.
So I'll
no. Let me kick it off because I feel.
I was gonna say, yeah. I'll let you. I'll let positivity take the lead here.
Because I feel like you kicked off the last two tracks, so let me try to pick up some of the momentum here.
That's all right.
This song is basically about Tade's relationship with his mother and how he wants her to die because she's such a bad person and she's getting worse. To basically sum up the reason why I love this song so much, and it has become my favorite song off the album, is this might be sacrilege here, but I wrote, this is Hot Mulligan's version of Idiot Wind. The lyrics are so incredibly brutal. Think about this set of lyrics. Can't stand the fact I know where you are. 10 years, I still try to spot your car. Well, when driving past your house, the taste of iron in my mouth, which alludes to him getting hit as a kid. Or the shame that I have to look like my mom, disgraced. I made me my father's son. And then another set of lyrics are, you ruined everything you touch around here. Let the locusts have your home. They feel the same. I feel the same. And it's just such a brutal song in terms of the lyrical content. Again, incredible guitar work here. I like the section where you hear recheck, change, which is basically Tade's doing an internal check if he's become anything like his mother, and if he has, he's gonna change. But yeah, that's simply why I love the song so much.
Yeah. So to clarify, this is one of my least favorite tracks off the album. But two things off that. One, I still like it. I still like the track. Mainly because I think musically it sounds fantastic. You're right, the guitar work is fantastic. The way the track ebbs and flows is pretty good too. And I would say this probably elevates it to second least favorite at this point because of what you just did. Because if you had not explained that, I would have no idea in God's name what this track is about.
Yeah.
Because to me, through the first couple of listens post the vinyl spin that we did, my takeaway was that it just got a little too wordy at times.
Yeah.
And to me, the thing is, like, with the last track, particularly Cock Party 2, is that I could tell what the lyrics were about, and I could sort of feel the lyrics there. Whereas I feel like this one, it got a little wordy in the sense of there were a little too many, like, there were too many allusions to me as far as, like, sort of, like, idioms or whatever.
Yeah.
That sort of threw me off a little bit, and, like, I shouldn't have to go into a song where it sort of takes all these expressions and just sort of throws them into a bag. But at the same time, the way you explain it does sort of tie it all together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just thought it was a little wordy to me compared to especially some of the other ones, particularly following both Betty and Cock Party 2, that this just felt a little too... And again, it's not a bad track at all. Like, it's a solid track. But compared to everything else off the record, it's sort of it's in the lower tier for me.
That's incredibly fair. Speaking as somebody, I mean, for those of you literally listening to this podcast right now, you probably can tell that I can get a little wordy as well.
That's fair.
So, like, you know, maybe like the wordiness doesn't really affect me. Well, I mean, to an extent it can, but even, like, you know, pivoting off of the discussion about the lyrics, like the groove that occurs here in the chorus, again, it's a nice groove. It's not my favorite groove off the whole album. I think that that distinction goes to the Coffee Shop song.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I totally understand your sentiment about it, and with Tade's delivery and his intentions with his songwriting, I think it's more of a way to exercise his demons.
Yeah.
So, because...
like, this track is more necessary than it is supposed to be, like, you know, professional. This is just him just putting his thoughts out. It's like, this is how I feel. And to be fair, all these little self-references or sort of the scattershot nature of the lyrics might be on purpose as well.
Absolutely. All right. Ready to move on to Gaines Media Retro Games?
Moving on to Gaines Media Retro Games.
So, I'll lead this one off.
Yeah.
So, Gaines Media Retro Games. It's... so, at least thematically, this is about only seeing what someone's doing wrong in their life. Like, this is Tade's own words. Seems like I drink and lose touch between what I'm saying and what I mean. Musically, this song has a cool little balancing act between distortion and that kind of ghosty lead that I'm stoked about. It really doesn't sound like something we've done before. The song name originates from a retro video game store right across for where Hot Mulligan recorded this album. And they, like, the band would frequently visit that shop, which inspired them to name the song after the store.
Fair enough. I love the. I mean, granted, I love the sort of nature of a lot of these song names. Where it's just like, hey, we went to a place, and that's what we named the song after.
Yeah.
Doesn't really explain Cock Party 2, but alas.
Yeah, pretty much. So out of all the tracks here, man, Gaines Media Retro Games, I feel like out of all the songs, this could be the single off of the album. I don't know if it was ever a single. Maybe I could look up that here in the like, you know, while you're riffing on your thoughts about this track here. Solid enough song for me, man. Like, you know, I like in a lot of tracks here that Hot Mulligan does. It starts out with basically the thesis statement, and then you get the jam, verse, chorus, verse, and it riffs on that. I like that. The groove works pretty well. The guitar and drum work during the verse is a great touch. With their offbeat rhythms and how they weave together, it works out so well. Overall, the lyrics do a great job driving home that point of the song. Section I want to highlight is the first mistake was losing my self-control. Can't bite my tongue when I'm drunk, and here I thought it was the same for everyone. The moment where Tades is singing "Stay down, stay down, stay down," like I love that moment to highlight off the track for me. Overall, solid track, dude.
So, oddly enough, this is my other least favorite track off the album.
Oh, really? Okay.
And again, it's not bad. It's solid. I think the drums are great, and I agree that the lyrics are pretty solid. But honestly, this was probably, and I kind of appreciate you saying that this would be the single off the album if it were, or you're sort of philosophizing that it would be, because that was my one nitpick about the track, because the vocals on this track for me sounds a little too screamy. Like a lot of the album, I do appreciate the scream vocals, but this one, for some reason, I just thought the entire track as a whole sounded way too much like stereotypical emo punk or emo rock, which again isn't bad. Like, it's fine. Like, if I'm listening to this album like in the background, it wouldn't bother me at all. But I feel like just based off the other songs that are on the album, it just sort of, like you said, it's solid, but for me it was just a little too solid. It was just like a little too like the way there's just, the vocals just like it's like, for some reason I just couldn't get past that on this particular track. I'm not sure why.
So I looked it up.
You did look it up.
So this album has 3 singles here. Gaines Media Retro Games was the second single. The first single was Shh, Golf Is On.
Really?
And the third single is No Shoes in the Coffee Shop or Socks.
33% rate, I don't know.
I love it. But yeah, for me, another moment I want to highlight here is in the last chorus, how it starts out with the band dropping out, and then you just have Tades riffing on that vocal. I feel like it works out well, and it highlights the emotional intensity of the track, and especially when the band comes back in. And you know what I discovered at the end of the track here that I never knew that was part of it was synths. I heard synths.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not hear synths, so I'm glad you picked that up.
Yeah, I was just like, wait, what is that? I'm like, that's synths, man. Holy crap, dude. So yeah, ready to move on to the next track here?
Yes, the penultimate track off of Why Would I Watch, which is, I'm going to try to see if I can pronounce this correctly, Schmacked My Head Off.
So I don't really have a blurb about this here.
You wrote out.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the only thing I could not find a blurb. I mean, the song it could be about Tades dealing with not dealing with, but caring for his grandmother who had dementia. But that's about it. So,
well, I'll take this one. I think this goes back to a lot of the strengths that I liked on some of the other tracks off the album. I think the vocal back and forth between the two vocalists works very well on this song. I love the allusion at the end, or really throughout the whole song, of writing songs to someone that means so much to them just to become a stranger in due time.
Yeah. Like,
there's a theme there, a sort of vibe of Lost Ambition that very much complements Cock Party 2. And I think that we talk about what the name could have come from. The lyrics tend to teeter between self-loathing and forgiveness, saying, I hate myself, but I shouldn't hate myself that much, but on the other hand, I should. So maybe Smacked My Head Off is just sort of a literal terminology. Is like, I'm messing my head so much that it's might just come off.
Yeah.
So I really like this track a lot. I think it gets things sort of back to where the unique Hot Mulligan sound.
I would agree, man. Like, the ability of Tades to put the listener right in the headspace of what he was experiencing during the time where he was caring for somebody who was losing memories, and like that's so like. A little bit about me. That's my number one fear, having dementia and Alzheimer's. Like, I don't want that to happen. If that ever happens, just kill me. Not really. Anyways.
That could be a name of a Hot Mulligan song.
Yeah.
If that happens, just kill me. Not really.
But just the regret that you can really feel in this track here about like Tage realizing that he should have like spent more time with this loved one. You can really feel it. I mean, there's not much else to the track here, and that's okay. Like sometimes like you need a track that can help you cope with stuff. And this is like what I love about what Hot Mulligan brings to the table. What can music bring to the table as a whole? Is hey, I'm going through something. Let me literally exercise my demons to get it out. And you, as a listener, you are going through the same thing. Let yourself listen to the song that I wrote about the same thing that we're experiencing, and let you deal with those emotions. Because if you don't deal with emotions, you make bad life choices. I hate to say it. Like
that's fair.
At the end of the day, like, you know, I'm not going to get too political here, but just nuts and bolts. Ladies and gentlemen, please learn how to manage your emotions healthy. If you don't, bad things will happen in your life.
I will. The only thing I'll add to that is a damn shame that you have to say, put a political like. Trigger warning before that, because that shouldn't be something that's political. That's just basic humanity to me.
Yeah, something I'm learning as I'm getting older, man. So the last track is John the Rock Cena. Can you smell what the Undertaker?
It's the best title on the entire album, because have you ever seen those memes where like it talks about like for example, I don't know if you ever seen the one where it's like, you know, the baby in the album, the cover album of Nirvana's Nevermind is actually Dave Grohl, who grew up to be, you know, the drummer for Metallica and then he went on to become like the guitarist, like, you know, the completely inaccurate like music memes. Yeah. Like that's the vibe I'm getting for that title. I love those memes. I love that title so much.
So before we like talk about this track here, so I've kind of gotten back into watching WWE wrestling, and they had WrestleMania 40 about a month or two ago, right? Yeah. And in the main event where they had Cody Rhodes facing off against Roman Reigns for the title, right? At the very end, they had a whole bunch of interference, and so they had like, you know, the current roster guys, and they had a bunch of legends come out. And the order that they came out in, I swear to God, this is how they came out in. John Cena, The Rock, and The Undertaker.
And somewhere Hot Mulligan's watching that, it's like, what the hell? Where was our invite? Did you not do your research?
Well, when I realized that, I'm like, oh my goodness! So, yeah. Pivoting... in terms of like what the song can relate to, what the song title relates to in terms of lyrical content within the song itself, I can't stretch it, man.
No, you can't. There's literally no way.
But lyrically, the song is about the effect that Christianity has on young children when they're growing up, where they realize that. Some kids might be realizing, hey, my thoughts, my inner desires, like, I am a disgusting human being. I just want to be out of my body. I want to tear my body open. And, like, really set the seeds for self-hatred. So, it's actually appropriate that this track comes at the very end, because this is basically, hey, we're back to where it all started. Not saying that Christianity necessarily leads to that. I would think it's just mainly just the human bastardization of some elements of the modern day religion.
I tend to agree with that. And we have run out of songs on the album, so spoiler alert, this is number 3 in my top 3. Because of what you said, I think it provides, I think that some of the best lyrics on the album, great insight into sort of a religious-based dysmorphia in a sense, where, again, like you say, you have this feeling of wanting to tear out your body and, you know, take away all the stuff that makes you impure. And aside from that, because I agree with all what you just said, musically it sounds really good too. The outro is very powerful and angry and does put a nice capper on this relatively tense album both sonically and lyrically. I think it's a great closer. The vocals are it very much was reminiscent of the end of Brave Faces Everyone.
Yeah.
Although I would say this is probably I wouldn't say this is I might say this is a better closer than that one.
Yeah.
Just because, again, I feel like the subject matter on this is a little bit more targeted, and sort of it does the same thing that Cock Party 2 and Schmack My Head Off did, which is just sort of put a focus on a single life moment or a handful of life moments, and sort of discuss that at length. And I think that's probably the strongest parts of this album is when Hot Mulligan does exactly that.
Yeah. And not really much else I can add. Like, there's lyrical moments at the end. Like, one thing I'm going to specifically highlight, when you talk about that impactful ending that occurs, is like lyrics I want to highlight is flaws all covered, poor posture, gave my heart your black altar, broke my bones to fit your mold, holy.
Yeah.
And like, again, not much else I can add. Like, you did an excellent job at capping off the like just everything that this can bring to the table. Again, like, I feel like as a whole, when we were discussing this album, like, there's not really too many moments that we can really dissect, because that's what Hot Mulligan brings to the table as a whole.
Yeah.
So we did it.
We did it.
We discovered, why would we want to watch a Hot Mulligan?
Ew. Again, if you don't know why that would be disgusting, again, end of last episode, the Bob Dylan episode, reverse the audio. You may not appreciate what he's saying. Or if you don't want to do that, just go up to Urban Dictionary. That's fine too.
So I feel like I went first last time for the rating and reviews. So.
Yeah, I'll go first this time. I think this was a very good album. I think it was a very solid album. Again, for those who are definitely into like the early 2000s pop punk or emo rock type of thing, particularly again like artists like Jimmy Eat World or Blink 182 or Good Charlotte or Fall Out Boy. Like, this is definitely in that realm, although I would say that the lyrics are definitely more towards the aim of bands like Spanish Love Songs. Now, is this an album that I particularly thought was like superlative in a lot of ways to some of the records we talked about? Not particularly, but again, when I'm struggling to find nitpicks in the album like I did with Gans Media Retro Games or Golf Is On, ultimately that just marks that this is just a very solid album from the front to back. And again, aside from maybe Cock Party 2 or No Shoes in the Coffee Shop, I can't really say that there's many tracks on this album that I would like just immediately go back to like I would with Blood on the Tracks, or even Surfer Rosa for that regard. But again, it's an album that doesn't have a whole lot of highlights, but just as few lowlights. So I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10.
Me too, man.
Really?
Yeah, 8 out of 10.
Wow.
So
I thought you were going to go a little higher the way you were talking about some of these songs.
Yeah. I mean, I personally do enjoy like a great bit of tracks here. A couple things held it down for me. Then I'll talk about the positives here. Is it an album that changes the way that I listen to music? No. I mean, I've heard this before. And not the same band, but like a comparison that I didn't think of until like the moment that we sat down to do this review. Do I like this band more or less than Spanish Love Songs? I prefer Spanish Love Songs 10 times out of 10 compared to this here.
Yeah.
And the moment that occurred in the song that is called what it's called, this song is called what it's called. It brought it down for me because I realized that there was a legitimate nitpick here. And a lot of this does have the samey kind of feel. But pivoting off from that, what makes this album an 8 out of 10, not a 6 or 7 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10. oh my god, I think I would break like the world if I gave this a 5 out of 10.
You would need to change your name and move to Hawaii.
Yeah, pretty much. But the ability of Tade's vocal delivery and lyrics throughout this whole album here, where he's able to place the listener into the mindset of what he's trying to get across the table, like in moments of like "And I Smoke," where you can really feel the anxiety. Golf is on. You can really feel the hatred that he has for his mother. And then even in moments of like it's a family movie, she hates her dad, where you can really feel the hopelessness of what he's trying to get across the table. This is all disguised on top of fantastic guitar work, fantastic drumming, fantastic band work all around, where honestly, if you don't pay attention to the lyrics and you put this album on as like a good driving album, works out fantastic. Now, if you're a fan of the music that me and Matt compared this to, absolutely give this album a listen. Check out their other stuff too. They have a lot of good stuff that they've brought to the table. And if you ever want to see them live, I would highly recommend it. They put on one hell of a live show.
So based off of this album, and I forewarn what I'm about to say by saying this has less to do with laziness and more so to do with my inexperience in the genre in and of itself.
Yeah.
The next album I would recommend is the album we talked about several albums ago, which is Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs. Because I feel like, much like that album, and not just because, again, it's the same genre, but I do feel like there's elements like when I heard Betty on this album, it kind of reminded me of, I don't even remember what track it was off of that album, the penultimate one that I said I didn't like but was very effective.
Yeah. Dolores, yeah.
Dolores, yeah. But again, I feel like, the anxiety off that record, I think the vocals are a little better on that record. I think it's a little better produced too. But that would be my recommendation, is Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs would be my recommendation based off of Why Would We Watch.
And mine's going to be an easy recommendation. I've learned from my past mistakes, considering that when we did the Bob Dylan episode, I did not recommend a Bob Dylan album, even though I knew Bob Dylan albums other than Blood on the Tracks.
Yeah.
But so my recommendation is going to be easy. It's going to be the previous album that Hot Mulligan has done, which is You'll Be Fine. Basically a lot of the same stuff that they bring to this album, they brought to that album. Great songs off of there. Backyard, Equipped, Sunglasses. Overall great album, man. So so that being said,
my turn.
Yeah, are we gonna hard pivot?
We are gonna hard pivot, and again, not to get too political, but the last 5 albums that we have done, if I am not mistaken, have all been by white rock artists, which, again, nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but I feel like it's time to take a little bit of a pivot. So I am going to go into an album that is by a female R&B artist. Now, which one that is depends on your selection of the following 2 choices. I'm going to give you 2 numbers. 1 or 30?
30.
All right, 30 it is. 30 is the number that Ryan has chosen, and it is the name of the next album that we are going to do. 30 by Adele.
Oh, here we go. Oh, my brain's going to have to auto-adjust. Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, hey, yeah, I'm here for it, man.
Your brain just like, I was not expecting this. What the hell's going on right now?
And I smoke. All right. Cool. Do you have anything else about this album, the next album, anything as a whole before I send us out?
Not really. Again, I appreciate this album quite a bit again. It wasn't super standout, but it definitely had not a whole lot of negatives, and I would definitely recommend it to those who appreciate this genre, or just in general. I mean, we talked about this last week with the whole yes, but comparison with, like, where I said, Blood on the Tracks was a definite yes, no questions. This would be yes, but if you're not into this, you may not appreciate it type of thing.
Yeah, So check out the album if you enjoyed this review here. And also, if you have not listened to 30 by Adele, before next week, make sure that you treat yourself to that record, because we're going to be talking about that. That being said, if you like what you heard in this episode here, and let's face it, we're about an hour and 14 minutes in, I think.
I got minute 12, and that might include some stuff. So minute 10.
Yeah, a minute 10.
70 minutes.
Okay, so you're over an hour into this podcast here, and you're listening to me drag on the outro here, so you like what you're hearing. So the best way you can support me and Matt here, do more stuff, is on that platform that you're listening to us on. Leave us a positive review. Follow us. If you're listening to this on the YouTubes, like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment in the video below with an emoji of how you felt about this album here. Be careful what you choose. But yeah, social media links are going to be linked in the episode description. And also, for those of you who are maybe vaguely curious or maybe a little bit bored, something I'm going to be including at least in the next couple episodes description is a link to my Discogs, so you can see what's in my vinyl collection. So you can see hey, this is what Ryan's into, and then maybe you can treat yourself to checking out a couple different artists, and who knows, maybe you'll jump onto a album that me and Matt are going to talk about in the future. But yeah, that being said, for the last time, why are we watching this Hot Mulligan on this podcast, I am the one, the only, the non-smoking Ryan James Kearns.
I am the one, the only Matthew James Durzik, and I too am a non-smoker.
And here's what I gotta say about this as a whole. So it goes, man. Some things just have to end. And one thing I hope that you do is you still keep up with your college friends.